In 1987, Senator Leo Ryan traveled to Jonestown, a mysterious religious compound, amid rumors of kidnapping and abuse. Edith Parks, grandmother of the Parks family and resident of Jonestown, walked right up to the senator and told him she was the prisoner and wanted out. Senator Ryan responded by telling her and all the other families coming forward that they would be safely brought home. Little did they know, in just one day, almost 1,000 would be dead and 5 children would be missing in the South American jungle. This is the escape from Jonestown.
He said, if you see me as your friend, I'll be your friend. As you see me as your father, I'll be your father. If you see me as your savior, I'll be your savior. He said, even so, if you see me as your God, I'll be your God.
In the midst of the 1950s, Indianapolis witnessed the emergence of a new, unconventional spiritual leader, Jim Jones. Without any formal religious affiliation or theological training, Jones captivated audiences with his charisma, claiming abilities that seemed to stretch the bounds of reality.
Are your fingers numb? In your right hand. Reach the fingers out that are bothering you. Now, is the pain gone?
His charisma and purported supernatural skills attracted a growing following, laying the groundwork for what would become known as the People's Temple. But Jones wasn't content to stay put. As the 1960s dawned, America found itself in the grip of Cold War anxiety. Fears of a nuclear holocaust invaded Jones' mind, a shadow over every day of modern life. It was within this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty that Jones made a bold move. He relocated the People's Temple to California, positioning the church as a sanctuary from the dread of atomic devastation. This relocation wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a strategic expansion of Jones' influence and a deepening of the control over his congregation. In California, Jones' operation took on new dimensions. He aligned the People's Temple with the Disciples of Christ, an offshoot of the Protestant religion. This affiliation lent a veneer of legitimacy to Jones' ministry, broadening its appeal. With a mix of charismatic authority and dire warnings of an apocalyptic future, Jones crafted a narrative that was both captivating and terrifying, laying the foundations for one of the most tragic episodes in modern religious history. In 1973, Jones unveiled plans for an unprecedented venture, the creation of a South American paradise.
See, they've made progress on the road and leveled it, clear in the 5 miles. Then you're seeing in the distance housing complexes that are being built.
This utopia would be a beacon of humanitarian excellence, a place where justice, equality, and communal living would triumph over the ills of modern society.
The sense of accomplishment and responsibility and camaraderie that's here.
We are making a place of refuge for all of you here.
None of this would have been possible had it not been for Jim Jones.
Jones' Paradise, later known as Jonestown in Guyana, was anything but the sanctuary it was promised to be. Jones, exploiting his magnetic pull over his followers, often resorted to blackmail, humiliation, and even physical violence to maintain control.
I was in a lot of the meetings where people were spanked or beaten, and I was slapped once also in a public meeting.
Members found themselves trapped in a psychological vice, brainwashed into signing over their homes and possessions to the church. Perhaps most insidious, minorities within the congregation were fed the terrifying lie that leaving the community would result in their internment in concentration camps. As the years passed, the outside world began to take notice. By 1977, the press started piercing the veil of secrecy that surrounded the People's Temple, prompting probing questions about its practices and leadership. In a drastic response to this growing scrutiny, Jones orchestrated a mass migration of his followers to Jonestown. Among those who uprooted their lives for the promise of paradise were the Parks family, who, like many others, were swept up in Jones' persuasive narrative of salvation and safety. The Parks family arrived in Jonestown in 1978, and like many others, were swiftly plunged into a reality far removed from the utopian promise that had been sold to them.
I seen those armed guards. That's when my heart fell. I knew then. I didn't have to wait till I got in Jonestown. I knew then I had made the biggest mistake of my life.
Upon arrival, parents and children were separated, a tactic designed to disorient and weaken the familial bonds that might oppose Jim Jones' total control.
I couldn't say goodbye to my son and my husband because at that point it was like the Gestapo. The families were turning in each other. If I had said goodbye, one of them would have reported me.
Gerald Parks, realizing the gravity of the decision to follow Jones to Guyana, was consumed by a sinking feeling of dread.
You can feel death in the air. You can actually feel it.
The utopia he had envisioned was a mirage, and in its place stood a regime of fear and subjugation. The following day, a brief conversation with his cousin confirmed Gerald's fears. He was asked how he was enjoying Jonestown, to which Gerald replied, "I'm not." Expressing such doubts was dangerous, however.
His voice would come over the loudspeaker and he'd say, "I'm sending somebody out tonight. Somebody you know, somebody you trust. And they're gonna act like they want to leave. But this is a loyalty test, and you need to turn them in."
That very night, in a display of power meant to quell any thoughts of dissent, Gerald was dragged in front of the community and subjected to a brutal beating. This act of violence was a stark warning to all. Loyalty to Jones was paramount, above personal safety or moral integrity. Life in Jonestown quickly deteriorated into a grueling routine of long work hours, and what food there was of poor quality, often riddled with bugs.
There were so many duties in the temple that some people had to become full-time. So when you were full-time temple, you worked about 20 hours a day.
In a twisted test of loyalty, Jones orchestrated a macabre drill, forcing everyone to drink a fruit concoction that might be poisoned in order to show their loyalty.
White nights are when Jim would have us drink or pretend to drink poison.
But Gerald perceived this as just a rehearsal for the real thing. It was only a question of when. Even as Jones taunted them with the freedom to leave, the dense jungle surrounding Jonestown served as a natural barrier, a reminder of their isolation and helplessness. The reality of Jonestown was a stark contrast to the paradise promised. It was a place where fear was cultivated, dissent was punished, and freedom was nothing more than an illusion. Gerald's realizations of his monumental mistake was a bitter pill to swallow, encapsulating the tragic disillusionment of all who sought hope in Jim Jones' vision. In 1978, amid swirling rumors of abuse and misconduct within the Jonestown compound, Senator Leo Ryan made a decision that would etch his name into the annals of history. Concerned by the alarming reports emerging, Ryan announced plans for a fact-finding mission to see the conditions for himself. Jim Jones, aware of the impending scrutiny, issued a stern directive to his followers: present the best possible image to the outside world. On November 17, 1978, Senator Ryan, accompanied by a team from NBC, arrived in Jonestown, ready to peel back the layers of secrecy that shrouded the compound. To the visitors, Jonestown initially appeared to be a harmonious community. Smiles were abundant and happiness flowed freely.
Praised us.
I think that all of you know that I'm here to find out more about questions that have been raised about your operation here. But I can tell you right now that from the few conversations I've had with some of the folks here already this evening, that whatever the comments are, there are some people here who believe that this is the best thing that ever happened to them in their whole life.
However, this facade of contentment quickly crumbled when a brave man slipped a reporter a note, a silent plea for help that read, "Help us get out of Jonestown." The next day, the mission took a decisive turn. Edith Parks, Gerald's elderly mother, in a moment of raw courage, approached Senator Ryan and declared that they were all prisoners in Jonestown.
Now, do I both understand you to say that you both want to leave Jonestown on this date, November 18, 1978?
Gerald also declared that he wanted out, piercing the illusion of bliss that Jones had so meticulously crafted.
I told him who I was, and I said, we've been held prisoner here.
Their boldness acted as a catalyst, emboldening several other families to come forward, all expressing a desperate desire to leave the clutches of Jim Jones and return to freedom. With these revelations, Senator Ryan swiftly arranged for their return, planning to take the defectors back to the airstrip for a flight to safety. Among those to leave was 12-year-old Tracy Parks, whose terror at the potential repercussions for her family underscored the pervasive atmosphere of fear that Jones had cultivated.
I knew that in the first month there, that I'm stuck here and that I'm most likely going to die here.
Senator Ryan stood as a beacon of hope. In his determination, he embodied the possibility of liberation from Jonestown's tyrannical grip. However, the situation was fraught with danger.
When word got out that people were leaving, all hell broke out.
You bring those kids back here! Hold on a second. You bring them back! One second. Don't you touch my kids!
The tense atmosphere of Jonestown reached a boiling point as 33 determined individuals, fueled by a desperate yearning for freedom, embarked on a precarious journey by tractor to the airstrip, miles away from the compound. However, the shadow of Jonestown loomed, a reminder of the dangers that lay in defying the will of its leader. As the group arrived at the airstrip, hopeful for a safe passage back to the U.S., their aspirations for freedom were shattered in an instant. A truck laden with armed men loyal to Jones had stealthily followed the defectors.
They drove this truck all the way across the airstrip and stopped on this side of the plane. So literally, they cut us off from the jungle. We never know there's people hidden inside the dump truck. The moment they stopped shooting right away.
Without warning, the air was filled with the sound of gunfire as the assailants opened fire on the unarmed group. This brutal attack claimed the life of 5 individuals, including Senator Leo Ryan and Patricia Parks, wife of Gerald and mother of Tracy. They wounded 11 others in this horrific display of violence. The truck, with its deadly mission accomplished, departed the airstrip, leaving behind a scene of chaos and despair. Amid the confusion, a tragic twist unfolded as a fake defector, a plant by Jones within the group of escapees, turned his gun on his supposed comrades. At close range, he opened fire, shooting one individual and killing Dale Parks, Gerald's son and Tracy's brother. In the wake of the tragic ambush at the airstrip, Gerald Parks faced a harrowing decision. With danger closing in, he instructed Tracy, her 18-year-old sister Brenda, and 3 others to seek refuge in the dense, unforgiving jungle surrounding Jonestown. Their instructions were clear: hide until called for.
We ran too far, and of course it's so thick that like once you get so far, you get lost in your direction.
As darkness enveloped the jungle and calls for their return went unanswered, the realization dawned on them.
And no response. And I thought, oh my God, don't tell me they're lost.
The first night in the jungle was fraught with uncertainty and fear. The children, driven by instinct, found a tree large enough to offer them sanctuary from the dangers lurking in the dark. As they climbed up to sleep, the distant echo of gunshots shattered the night's deceptive calm, leaving them to fear the worst, that everyone they knew might be dead. The following day brought no relief, only the buzz of a helicopter searching the area. With the fear of Jim Jones looming, they hid under leaves, mistaking the rescue for something more sinister. As night fell, Tracy Parks succumbed to a fever, a stark indicator of the physical toll the jungle was taking on them. By November 20th, the 3rd day of their ordeal, all the children were now ill and exhausted, their bodies pushed to the brink by the harsh conditions of their unintended sanctuary. It was then that Brenda Parks, driven by desperation, detected the faint hum of a generator in the distance. Clinging to the hope of rescue, they followed the sound, only to stumble upon armed men. Their hearts sank as they braced for the worst. However, the reality back at the compound was unfolding in a manner far removed from their fears. Unbeknownst to them, the tragic events at the airstrip had set Jonestown on a path from which there was no return. Back in Jonestown, Jim Jones convened what would become the most infamous meeting in the history of the People's Temple. With defectors speaking up and the fabric of his constructed utopia unraveling, Jones orchestrated a final catastrophic act.
The Congress is dead. You think they're going to allow us to get by with this? Must be insane. They'll torture some of our children here. They'll torture our people. They'll torture our seniors. We cannot have this.
Under the guise of a revolutionary white knight, Jones presented his followers with a lethal concoction, cyanide masked in a fruit drink. The atmosphere was one of chaotic despair. Some drank willingly, ensnared by Jones' manipulative rhetoric to the very end, while others were forced to consume the poison.
Mother, 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 please. Mother, please, 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 don't do this, don't do this. Lay down your life with your child, but don't do this.
The tragedy that unfolded was staggering in its scope and brutality. In total, 918 lives were extinguished, making it one of the largest mass deaths in a single event. The community that had sought salvation in Jonestown met an end marked by horror and sorrow, a stark testament to the dangers of blind allegiance to a flawed leader. In the aftermath of the Jonestown tragedy, the fates of those associated with the People's Temple took diverse and often harrowing paths. The gunmen responsible for the deadly attack at the airstrip met their end in the mass death, a grim closure to their unwavering loyalty to Jones. The fake defector gunman who had sown further terror at the airstrip miraculously survived the massacre. Extradited and imprisoned for his role in the events, he was eventually paroled in 2002, a controversial decision that reopened old wounds for many. Of the nearly 1,000 souls in Jonestown, only 33 survived. Jim Jones, the architect of this apocalypse, met his own end not with the collective fate of his followers, but by a gunshot wound. In a final act of cowardice, he chose a death that spared him the agony of the poison, leaving behind a legacy of manipulation, fear, and devastation. His demise did little to comfort the families of the victims. The survivors' paths post-Jonestown were fraught with challenges. The trauma of their experiences manifested in various ways, with some turning to crime and even murder, reflecting the deep scars left by their time in the cult. However, not all survivors followed a path of despair. Many struggled to rebuild their lives, seeking to find some semblance of normalcy after the unimaginable.
Congressional aide Jackie Spear came back on a stretcher.
I was hospitalized for 2 months. I must have had over 10 surgeries.
For a time, she thought she had lost use of her right arm.
How are you? I'm Jackie Spear and I'm running for Congress. How are you this morning?
Fine, thank you.
Very good.
She ran for her murdered congressman's seat, but lost in a hard-fought primary, then turned to county and state politics, and served almost 2 decades in the California legislature. Early in 2008, the Leo Ryan seat opened up again. This time, Jackie Spear won in a runaway race.
So help you God.
I do.
Congratulations, you are now a member of the
and was sworn in after 30 years as a freshman congresswoman.
The legacy of Jonestown through the eyes of its survivors is a mosaic of human resilience and fragility, a testament to the capacity for survival against the backdrop of easily one of the most harrowing events in modern history.